Hi, and welcome to the CDFA Hotline. My name is Kristen Sharon, and I'm very excited to be here with you today. Amanda Mason is our guest. Amanda is an attorney who realized she wanted to make the divorce process better. So she founded Soligree, which is a mediated arbitration process. Soligree offers divorce solutions nationwide. Soligree can help good people who want to avoid court and resolve their divorce in a more efficient way. For those of you who are new, our hotline, we will give you the opportunity to ask professionals in the divorce and financial industry questions about the divorce process. We're hoping that this hotline will generate some discussion that you will find helpful. The purpose of our show is to provide general information as it relates to divorce and to showcase how certified divorce financial analyst professionals can help. While we will be answering questions about divorce and finances, we cannot offer personalized financial or legal advice. The reason for this is because every single divorce situation is so specific. There are many factors that impact your particular situation, such as state-specific statutes or guidelines. And so we're going to answer your questions generally and hope to steer you towards information and resources and professionals that can help you. But nothing that you hear on this show should be construed as legal advice or financial advice or tax advice. I really cannot emphasize that enough. And please do not consider anything that you hear today as a reason not to seek professional assistance to your particular situation. So this show is educational, not advisory. We do, however, hope to provide you with some great information and resources to point you in the right direction. So thank you, Amanda, for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to everyone.
Okay, great. Well, we will just dive right in. So
Great.
Mark from Ohio writes in, I keep hearing that starting with a certified divorce financial analyst can make the process smoother. Why would I want to talk to a CDFA before I even hire an attorney?
Okay, I love this question. I'm so glad that Mark asked it. And this is part of what is the tenet of my method that we developed in our Soligree company. CDFAs are the people who are in the best position to start the conversation of how you're going to manage your divorcing, separating finances. This is because CDFAs are specifically trained professionals to do this work. When a person has gone from a CDFA and then on into whatever next phase of the process that they're going to seek is, they are more capable of understanding and being educated in the conversation for what happens next. So rather than start with an attorney who's a generalist, an attorney is someone who is highly trained to understand how these pieces fit into the legal process. Why don't we start with the piece of the process that's geared towards the couple themselves? So yeah, absolutely. And when I was practicing law full time, I actually had a full-time CDFA on staff because I truly believe that these are the people who are in the best position to help couples.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And even as a practicing family law attorney, it's so much easier for me to give my client advice once I have the data in front of me. So it really saves money and time to have that information prepared before you go to the divorce because it just allows the attorney to give you such better information.
No, it really does. And the fact is that most attorneys aren't particularly helpful or really that interested in that piece of it. And so it relieves the attorney to be able to say, here's the evidence. And great, I've got good educated clients. And now I can explain to them how that's going to fit in the rest of the framework of what we're going to do for them.
Great. Okay, so Claire from Rochester says, I'm confused about the difference between mediation, arbitration, and going to court. Can you break down how each one works and how someone might know which is the best fit for their situation?
Sure. Well, let's start with court. So going to court means you're going to have a trial. It's what's called the adversarial system in our country, which means it's somebody against somebody. And that can work pretty well if you've got, a business dispute or a criminal prosecution. But most often, people who are going through the divorce process are fine people. Maybe someone's made a mistake, but overall, these are fine people that need to be able to move on and forward in this process quickly, first of all, which doesn't happen in court, and in a dignified, respectful manner that's appropriate and that can honor the relationship and then also give them space to co-parent. So we try to avoid court as often as possible. That was my philosophy in my law practice. That's my philosophy in what I do now. We want to keep people out of court. Court's also expensive because the longer something takes, the harder it is, the more time people have to find things to fight about, and the more work there is that's going to need to be done. So we want something more efficient. So the other two options are great. Mediation is an opportunity for couples to get together, ideally as early as possible in the process, in my opinion, once they've visited with a good CDFA and understand their needs. Um, and they can work with a professional neutral who helps them negotiate and find resolutions for themselves. Because we know the studies have shown, and we know, Kristen, you and I as attorneys, that when people design their own outcomes, they're more satisfied. So mediation is going to give the opportunity for a couple to come up with a potential resolution through negotiations. And arbitration is a nice, almost little hybrid option. This is an option whereby people can almost have a private adjudicator. I call it the safety net. So if they can't resolve everything, first of all, to the extent that they have resolved a lot of things through a mediation, for example, or a negotiation, the arbitrator is going to honor that and carry that out. But if there are things left over, if there's some hangups that are keeping the couple stuck from finalizing everything, the arbitrator is there to make a decision for the couple. And the benefits of that are, one, it's a private, confidential process. So you're not in a big, scary courtroom with some stranger in a black robe who most often doesn't have any professional experience actually doing family law. They just took the bench through whatever mechanism and got sort of stuck into the family courtroom. And they're a lot of times, frankly, burnt out and cranky, as anyone would be, because they're humans. The arbitrators have been selected by the parties. They're eager. They want to do a good job. They want to treat people with respect. And then the other important piece of that is they can get this done more quickly and more efficiently than waiting for a court date, because that can sometimes take 2, 3 more years. I've heard horror stories of 5, 6, 7 years for some couples. What an awful way to spend that length of time in your life waiting for someone just to decide for you. So 3 different options.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I am a huge fan of arbitration. I always advise my clients to go to arbitration over court if the mediation process doesn't work, because you get to choose your decision maker.
Yeah.
Whereas when you go to court, you get who you get. I always tell people that, we live in a country where we have the luxury and the benefit of judicial resolution. There's so many places in the world that don't have that, where a process that you get to actively participate in. And I'm so thankful for it. But you get what you get. Um,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
lucky to have judicial resolution, we are, but it really, really should be an absolute last resort, and you should exhaust every other method before you go
Yeah.
down that road, unless you have, specific circumstances that require you to be there.
That's right.
Um, okay. Nina from Los Angeles says, in my marriage, my spouse handled all the money and I feel way behind on understanding finances. How do mediation or alternative dispute resolution processes make sure that one person doesn't take advantage of the other?
Great. Okay. So, first of all, one of the best ways we can do, I'm going to go back to your organization, Kristen. One of the best ways that we can deal with this circumstance is by having one or both members of this separating couple work with a CDFA, because a CDFA can help educate that person who maybe wasn't the bookkeeper in the marriage. Most marriages have one bookkeeper. It tends to fall. And I don't know if this is true in your practice, but in mine, there was not a gender that it necessarily fell to. It seemed like half the time it was wife, half the time it's the husband. So it's not an unusual situation, but a CDFA can really help educate. Here's how you get the money from your bank into the utility company every month. I mean, sometimes we just got to break it down that simply. So again, we get people educated early in the process. And then in the mediation, the nice thing is the mediator is a neutral. So whereas a couple in the description that you just gave involves one person who feels behind, and they may feel like there's a power dynamic issue, it's a level playing field when you're working with a mediator, because the mediator is just trying to get to a resolution, help them get to a resolution that helps both of them move forward with their lives. So yeah, great question.
Yeah, and Amanda and I are both mediators, and I would just encourage you to be honest with your mediator. When I'm mediating, I like it when one of the parties tells me, "Hey, look, I don't understand what that means. I don't understand what these documents say," because that allows us to potentially pause the mediation and say, well, let's bring in, this professional, or let's get you this information so that you do feel comfortable making those decisions, because part of the mediation process is having that comfort level. So be honest with your mediator about where you are and how you're feeling, and don't be embarrassed that you don't know this information.
No.
Um,
Yeah, don't be embarrassed. That's great advice. There's no reason to be embarrassed. As we said, sometimes the most successful people we know simply weren't the bookkeepers in their marriage, and they just need a little extra love in that moment.
yeah. So again, I think that that process helps more than hurts, as long as you're being honest about where
Yep,
you are.
agree.
Okay. David from Chicago writes in, and you did touch on this a little bit earlier, but privacy is a big concern for me. I don't want my personal financial details in a public court record. How is confidentiality handled in mediation or arbitration setting compared to a traditional court?
Right. So courtroom, public, everyone can see, and records are generally public also. So this is a great moment for people who have anything that they want to keep confidential. Particularly, we see this issue as the financial picture gets a little more complex. There may be businesses involved or other issues that just simply are things people want to keep to themselves. Frankly, who wouldn't want to keep everything about their divorce to themselves? So yeah, court is wide open. The best way to protect that is through private processes. So again, the mediation, that's a confidential process. The mediator cannot come and testify in court at some point. It's a safe, neutral zone for you guys to openly discuss these things. And if there's something that you don't want your spouse to know during the mediation, sometimes that can be arranged as well, depending on the circumstances. So that would be a good option, Kristen, to have that honesty with the mediator. Then the arbitration, again, that safety net, the tiebreaker, that's someone who can handle the decisions for you, but everything's going to be confidential except for the bare bones that you would want to have turned into a court order if need be. So yeah, those are the best options for someone who's looking for privacy, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that obviously financial data, that's a no-brainer. You don't want that in the public record. But as a lot of our states are going to e-filing or online services, they haven't necessarily worked out what information to that is publicly searchable and what information needs to be a little bit more confidential. And you might be surprised at how much information is put out there in the public, especially I feel like with children.
Yeah,
If your children have, if you're fighting about custody and your children have special needs, or they have some, emotional issue that is impacted by custody, all of that goes in your court pleadings, and that's gonna be searchable by your children one day. Um,
true.
and so I think that is the one of the most important reasons to utilize a method like Soul Agree, that embraces this mediation and arbitration method rather than the court method. Because what if you're looking for a job, and your new
Yeah,
employer searches this stuff, and all the private details of your divorce come out through a Google search. I mean, it's happening, and I think
yeah.
that everyone needs to be aware that this is not a place that you wanna be in our digital world.
That's right. Yeah. And we always want to put the children first, even when we're thinking about finances, for that reason, because there's very sensitive information that the children shouldn't have to be able to look up at some point someday. Parents should have privacy from their kids about their personal finances.
Absolutely. Okay, so Carla from Phoenix says, "If both of us already have attorneys, how does that work with mediation? Do they still get involved, or do they step back? What is their role?"
Yeah. And by the way, we love working with attorneys in the Soul Agree process. So part of what we developed was something that would be more enjoyable for attorneys to bring their clients through, because we all like to have satisfied clients at the end of the day. But the answer to that is it's up to the clients. Do the clients want the attorneys to appear at the mediation, or do they not? More often than not, if they have attorneys, my experience is that the attorneys will be with them at the mediation. And, that's an opportunity to kind of again have a conversation on how we can design our own outcome for our cases, but also have the guidance of our professionals sitting right there. And the nice thing when an attorney is involved is it frees up the mediator just to use their mediation skills without having to worry about, is someone not as educated and ready for the settlement process as the other one.
Yeah, as a mediator, I'm happy to work with couples individually, but I do feel more comfortable when they have attorneys.
Yeah.
Okay, Tom from Minneapolis wants to know, how does mediation handle complicated financial situations like business ownership, investments, or multiple properties? Is that too complex for ADR?
Oh, absolutely not. And this is kind of touching on what I just said. This is the circumstance that extremely needs ADR involved to resolve things for those privacy concerns. No, you're going to be engaging in the same level of information gathering and developing your own understanding of your case so that you can advocate for yourself, regardless of what method you utilize. So your in fact it's more set up with the professionals to resolve those issues because like I said earlier, judges, they may have no background in any of this. When you are selecting the neutrals who are going to help you resolve your case, you can tailor that selection process so that individuals who are specifically skilled and knowledgeable about these issues are the ones who are helping make these decisions with you and then if need be for you in the arbitration setting.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think the more complicated your situation is, the more this process benefits you. And one of the main reasons why is the amount of time that you can dedicate to it. So when you get a court date or a court hearing, they're going to give you the time that they're going to give you, and that's it. And that may not be enough time to get into the details that are required for a complex asset division. So when you go through ADR, you're allowed to schedule as much time as you need to make sure that your decision maker understands all of the complexities of your assets.
And I'll add too, the nice thing about arbitration for these cases is the flexibility of the proceeding. So that if we have to have different types of expert witnesses, the arbitrator can design a format that's efficient and really gets to the heart of it so that you're getting all of the information again in a way that's tailored to the couple, but really also because there can be informality and flexibility, allows the couple to be heard in a more thorough setting without having to worry about as many strict guidelines as the courts impose.
Yeah, when you go to court, you're really bound by those evidentiary rules, and a lot of times, it's in order to get evidence in, it requires a lot of additional work on the back end,
Right.
in order for that evidence to be admissible, and that back end work can be very, very expensive.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, those flexible evidentiary rules that can be agreed upon prior to the arbitration can really be helpful in just allowing both parties to be heard.
Right.
Um, okay, Ella from Boise has a great question. She says, okay, say that I want to go to mediation or I want to go to arbitration. When I'm searching for these things on the internet, what should I be looking for?
Yeah, that's really tough. I will say, I think it would be very difficult for an individual to try and find their own mediator, find their own arbitrator, find their own CDFA. So, one thing might be to start with maybe reaching out to IDFA, can point them in the direction of some of their members. Is that possible, Kristen?
Yeah, you can go on CDFA.com and search for find a CDFA. But in terms of finding a arbitrator, like we were talking about, finding that decision maker that you know is going to be good for your situation. How would
Yeah.
a general person in the public go about that?
Well, I would love for them to start with a conversation with our company. We would be happy to help them. That's part of what we do is we match professionals to the people who need them the most. So in every state, we have panels of mediators and arbitrators who are dedicated to our rules of ethics, who are dedicated to following our standard ground rules, who are very motivated, and we've vetted to make sure they have the right heart and mentality to treat people with respect in the process. So that would be a great option. The internet is hard. It's really hard. And, unfortunately, because of a lot of the lore of divorce, just asking around to your friends is not the best option because they tend to say, well, you need to go and get that shark attorney who's going to fight, fight, fight for your rights. And now you're off onto that path with that mentality. So I do say find a service that allows you to get plugged in to the professionals rather than try and do it on your own.
Yeah, I agree. I always cringe when I see, something in some chat forum of somebody, "Hey, does anyone know?" No, no, you need your situation is very, very different from your friend's situation or your neighbor's situation, and the person's down the road. And what worked for them may not be what works for you.
That's right.
Okay, I think we've got time for one last question. So Noah wants to know, how early in the divorce process should we start looking into mediation or alternative dispute resolution? Should we try it before we even file anything?
Yeah, I think the sooner the better. And in fact, it could be helpful to a couple that's even considering separation to start gathering resources and having an understanding of what this is going to look like. So one of the things that we do in Soul Agree very often is we're working with couples counselors or divorce coaches to help educate their clients, who are considering whether or not they're going to separate, so that they understand that even if that happens, there doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have this scary, expensive, protracted 5-year process that they're going to plunge into, that they're going to tear each other apart in. So immediately, yeah, you don't have to file something first and then go to mediation. And in fact, we would rather you didn't, in my experience, most of the time, because once you've filed something, then you're in litigation and you're in court, and it's very hard to unring that bell. It can be done, and we do it, but it's just that much harder.
Yeah, and mediation doesn't have to be a place where you get an instant resolution. So like you
Right.
said, even if you're thinking about it or you're kind of exploring this process, going and meeting with a mediator to talk about, "Hey, look, here are the things that I'm worried about. I'm worried about how what kind of schedule would impact my kids. I'm worried about what my monthly budget is going to look like." And that mediator can start talking through those issues with you even if you don't reach a resolution that day. Mediation can be done in one day, but it can also be done over the course of several weeks.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's a customized process that doesn't have to, that can fit your particular situation, which is what makes it so wonderful.
Right. Well, and to your point, Kristen, one of the frustrations that I had in the traditional court system, the couples typically go to a mediation, but it's getting close to a court date. The pressure's on. They've already been in their corners for a year, 2, 3 years. And there's a lot of pressure to get it done that day. And so they end up in this many hours long mediation designed to try and, sort of box it all up in one day, and sometimes they're making exhausted decisions late in the day. And I don't agree with that. So I do encourage folks to talk to mediators early. And yes, bear in mind, don't be frustrated if it's going to take 2, 3, 4, 10 sessions of mediation to get you where you want to be. It's still much better than ending up in the court system.
And that's wonderful advice. Well, I want to thank Amanda for being here with us today. If you have additional questions for her, you can find her at soulagree.com. I will put the link below. And if you're looking for additional information about Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, you can find that at CDFA.com or at the Institute DFA.com. If you search for under the public heading for Find a CDFA, you can find one local in your area. And we'll also have a link below for anybody who wants to submit questions for our next episode. Thank you so much for being with us.